Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barrhead Boy.
Alec, welcome to Through a Scottish Prism again. This is getting to be a habit. Nice to see you.
Hi, I've been listening for the last few minutes. I'm lucky you don't have a bottle of whiskey and a revolver about. you don't be shooting yourselves. Anyway, I was going to say to Jason that the ego can't have landed because surely I'm the ego. Don't you read the press?
Absolutely.
Anyway, guys, do you want to fire in questions and I'm fire in questions and I'll tell you where I think we are.
How are you feeling today about things?
Well, I'm grand. I mean, I've won so many elections. I get used to losing a few, so I'm on a bad run. I've lost 2 after having won 10. So, but look. Obviously, candidates, particularly the inexperienced ones, will be really disappointed because they, as everybody does, gets candidatitis. They were hoping for much more. And of course, we could have had much more if things had gone a bit better for us. And, I think we can have a post-mortem at any point. But, I mean, there was a good result available for us, and we didn't quite get there. But it should be said, I mean, forming a party or publicising a party in 6 weeks, getting 32 candidates, a manifesto, lots of things to say, important statements made, and 5,000 members, 2 MPs, 20 councillors. I think probably 50,000 votes, incidentally, which sounds a lot better than 2%. I suppose looking back, that'll be seen as no mean feat and probably something that hasn't been done before. And I comfort myself in that the resolve of the Alapa candidates and the activists seems to be pretty strong. And I don't agree with Jason at all about being no further forward. I think the position is ripe for Alapa to grow and flower and bloom in coming years. I mean, it's now a viable political party. It's a political party that's been necessary, one sitting on the independence flank of the SNP. Actually, Alapa has been a great help to the SNP in this campaign. I know that some of you who dislike the SNP enormously, I dislike some of the personalities in the SNP. I like the SNP, but I'm afraid I have to confess to a personal dislike of some members of it. But the SNP actually were helped in this campaign 2 ways by Alapa. I mean, firstly, there's fairly obvious points. If you look at Ayr or Banff and Coastal, it's quite clear that they would have lost these seats, or in the case of Banff and Coastal, and wouldn't have won it in the case of Ayr without the Alapa intervention, because I think in Banff and Coastal was about 1,200, 1,300 votes for Alapa in the list of the coastal seat, and the majority SNP was 700. I think it's a reasonable assumption that the SNP wouldn't have got that 700 votes unless Alapa had been there encouraging people to vote and encouraging people to vote SNP. So I think the Alapa intervention has been helpful practically, but it's also been helpful for another reason, that most of the venom of the mainstream media has been turned on Alapa. So it's, the venom that would have been accorded to the SNP has been accorded to Alapa. And it shows the importance, I think, of having a flank party who are genuinely and forthrightly and immediately pro-independence, because it makes the SNP look that bit more moderate. Whereas the SNP, despite their prevarication, despite their hesitation, despite their delays, despite their grand old Duchess of York behaviour of going up and down this hill innumerable times, without Alapa, are seen as the radicals of the independence movement. So I think Alapa is needed because it's filling a vacuum, and I think it will grow because, yes, you're quite right. Of course, Nicola will prevaricate. Nicola lost her nerve in independence back in 2017 and has never recovered it. It's as simple as that. And Alapa, as Alapa grows, as it will, because it will be demonstrated that everything we said is correct. And, like all parties who've had electoral disappointment, you comfort yourself in every argument Alapa put forward is going to be demonstrated to be absolutely correct. There will be 1 million wasted SNP votes on the regional list. And while the unionists vote cleverly and vote tactically on the constituencies like Dunbarton or Eastwood, and by doing so stop the SNP winning the constituencies, then the SNP sends their troops over the hill or over the top like some First World War general to have 1 million votes wasted, but not just wasted, of course, letting unionists by the back door. And as the SNP list votes pile up yesterday and pile up today, that will be very evident. That's exactly what is happening. So everything Alapa said about the electoral system, about what would happen, has come true, and the extent of the opportunity missed will be plain for all to see. All these arguments will stand Alapa in good stead. Crucially, apart from the activist base, apart from the fact the party is formed and demonstrated it can fight an election, Alapa has 2 members of parliament and 20 councillors. You know, it's got electoral credibility because we have elected members, and that will make Alapa a force to be reckoned with. And Alapa is necessary because it's no longer going to be the case that the SNP's prevarication will just be greeted by fulminations from the online social media extraordinary people who are on this call. That the SNP prevarication will be greeted by defections to Alapa. That's what will happen over the next couple of years, and that will be a good thing. Alapa will be a home for the disaffected of the Yes movement who are frustrated and angry about the SNP's inability to take their mandate and do something with it. So all of which seems to me a substantial gain. It's not just the same. Alapa exists, we think, therefore we are, and I think we'll go forward on that basis.
Can I ask you about your policy of being very positive towards the SNP?
What you said, I think you've already answered that question. You've no intention of giving up.
And no intention of giving up Alapa. I mean, Alapa will elect its leader in June or whenever we can have a non-virtual conference. But I'm certainly staying with Alapa. Yes, absolutely.
Can I ask?
Brilliant.
Yeah, all right, sorry,
Denise.
I came at the wrong time. You had a policy which has helped the SNP and actually has helped independents, having possibly actually they'll get compensated on the list, so maybe it hasn't. We don't know. But are you feeling that you should be more in opposition to the SNP moving forward, or are you going to continue to be a compliment to them when they are so mean to you or to Alapa and really not a compliment to Alapa?
I love the word mean. Mean. That Denise, you're sounding like my wee sister. That's what she'd have said. I mean, my wee sister, I should say, is an Alapa agent in the south of Scotland. But I like the SNP meanness. I mean, I have to say, many of the SNP leadership are among the most graceless people I've ever come across. I mean, John Nicholson, I think he takes the biscuit for lack of grace. I mean, this is somebody, who's the ultimate poser. He has done nothing whatsoever for the independence movement of any shape or form in his puff. He got elected in 2015 on the back of everybody else's hard work. He posed in Parliament for 2 years, got knocked out, then did nothing until 2019, and managed, because the SNP disgracefully prevented Tasmania Ahmed Sheikh from going back to her seat, managed to get in a seat he couldn't remember the name of. And this complete and utter poser has got he does cause some amusement. I always restrain myself. One day I'm going to unleash myself on Twitter. Now that Donald Trump has created a vacuum for me, I'm going to unleash myself and deal with the Nicholsons of this world. somebody who hasn't managed to do any work whatsoever apart from piggyback on the work of others. So meanness, yes. It's not meanness that worries me, Denise. It's meanness of spirit. And yes, I think Alapa will be much more vigorous post-election, because if you're fighting an election campaign where you're telling people to vote SNP in the constituency and Alapa on the list, then it is a bit silly to be mean, to use your word, to the people you're telling other people to vote for. But Alapa's not the SNP. Alapa is an independent supporting party, and Alapa will be free to criticise the lack of action, urgency, immediacy on independence. So of course it will. But I hope we'll manage to do that without the meanness spirit of the pygmies of politics like John Nicholson.
Iain.
I like myself are old enough in the tooth to have been through electoral disappointments in the past. And, the fact that we've been able to bounce back many times before suggests to me that there's no problem doing it this time, particularly when the evidence of what our message was, being right, will take no longer than 1 day to prove. We will know by 6 o'clock this afternoon who was telling the truth throughout this election and who was lying through their teeth. And I'm pretty confident the facts will back up what we said, that there'll be 1 million wasted votes, that Tory and Labour MSPs are elected thanks to those wasted votes. And the great victory of the SNP yesterday didn't last 24 hours, because the big winners are going to be Patrick Harvey and the Greens, who will be rubbing their hands, determining and writing down the list of demands they can make of Nicola in the next 5 years that she has no choice but to grant them.
I didn't see the question there.
Yes.
Oh, do you agree?
Well, I think I'm not sure that Nicola will find the Green demands all that unsavoury. I think she'll be quite happy with most of the Green demands, as far as I can make out. But it's true. Governments end up doing unpopular things, and to use an old Tory phrase, a Patrick Harvey is not somebody you'd go into the jungle with. For those of us who remember the events of early February, it was 2009, where he shook hands on a budget deal at lunchtime and voted against it at 5 o'clock. They ended up, incidentally, a week later, because the budget fell because of a tied vote, because of his antics. They ended up a week later as being the only 2 people who voted against the budget in the entire Parliament, because all the rest collapsed when they realised I was about to call an election. But Patrick is not one of life's. It's not one of the people you could stand shoulder to shoulder with, because you'd look round and find he wasn't there. So they'll find that, the Greens, if the Greens have the balance of power, or the Greens are in coalition, they'll find them a nightmare, of course, because as soon as you come up against an unpopular policy, you won't see Patrick for dust, or he'll be thinking about trying to do something else. So you'll just get incessant demands. You'll get a demand a day, an insistence a fortnight, and an ultimatum every month. That'll be Patrick. It may be that Fergus Much wins West Aberdeenshire, and I wish him luck, because Fergus is one of the good guys in this drama, and also would be a very good MSP. I think he'll find it quite difficult because of the strength of the Tory vote in the Shire. Which, the SNP have handed the Tories a rural vote, unfortunately, in Aberdeenshire, and they, that's about how the SNP are portrayed and seen. So I think Fergus will find it quite difficult. But on the other hand, the Tory MSP is a total clown. He's a complete idiot. So he may. Who knows? That might get Fergus home. But this will be a tough shift for him, I think. And that on that, of course, is the SNP's majority on that seat. They will lose the list seats in the south of Scotland, as we forecast, because they'll win the constituencies and lose the list.
we were told about gaming the system. Nicola wants to talk all the time about gaming the system. What we've seen with the results thus far is that the unionists have, well, the BBC referred to it as voting tactically. When we tried to do it, it was gaming the system. However you want to do it, the unionists worked it very well. I mean, for example, Oliver Mundell, one of the great MSPs, Joan McAlpine, sadly, although raising her vote by 4%, has lost her seat and will not win a list seat, as you point out. But they used it, and they've used it more successfully than the SNP. That's just a fact, Alec, is it not?
It's an absolute fact. I mean, incidentally, I've got no objection to tactical voting. That's just smart voting. You know, and unionists are quite entitled to vote for each other if they want. I mean, it's just that. Well, her problem is not that unionists vote for each other. Independent supporters don't, because they're ordered by their leadership not to. I mean, I have to say, it's more of a question of time, isn't it? I mean, if this had been a poll of political activists, let's just say the electorate had been composed of SNP activists, then Alapa would have stormed in. I mean, I saw it reported as 6. I think it was 5 SNP counters yesterday told me they'd voted Alapa. People there representing the SNP on the list. You know, so secretly, of course, and without the earshot of the sergeant majors who were there trying to intimidate them. But so if this had been a poll of SNP activists, or political activists for that matter, then Alapa would have done great. But this wasn't a poll of SNP activists, it was a poll of the people. And the general public take time sometimes to assimilate messages. And of course, the ability to get that message across, although, you know, despite the valiant efforts of the social media and expertise, I mean, would crucially depend on the television debates. I mean, that would have been the key. I mean, the key to this election was being shut out of the television debates. That's the absolute key to the election. I hoped and believed that you could counter that. And if we'd caught it a bit lucky in certain occasions, perhaps we could have. But you know, these things all have a percussion effect. You know, you get a first poor poll. The BBC justifies their exclusion of us on the basis of that poll, despite one 3 days later, which, you know, showing us that the magical 6%. You know, the BBC have the magical 6%. I mean, the BBC's assessment depends on, you know, whatever the Alapa vote was in any opinion poll, the BBC would assume that 1% more was necessary to justify coverage. You know, like that would be the BBC's rule of thumb. And of course, the BBC are in that position because of the context of the election that has been fought. Normally, a new party being launched, in addition to social media, in addition to doing the things that you would normally do, would generate body heat through you know, large public meetings, enormous crowds, which Alapa could have done easily. And you demonstrate credibility, you know, rather like the SDB alliance way back in the 1980s did. You know, that was their familiar by-election tactic. Well, obviously that wasn't available to us, nor was other means of canvassing, etc. So that made the broadcasting very, very important to the campaign. The broadcasting, of course, also dictated the daily news coverage, which it wasn't just a question of not being in debates. It was a question of not getting your spot in the daily news coverage, and therefore not registering with the general public as a serious challenger, therefore being squeezed, therefore losing votes, therefore not getting elected. But, you know, that's all what was. It's far better to look at what is and what's to come.
Jason, I'm sure you must have something to ask Alex.
Well, first of all, a clarification, because Alex came in saying, you know, I couldn't disagree with you in the strongest of terms, Jason, but to clarify, I didn't mean that we weren't any further ahead with Alapa. You know, of course I do. I think this is a great step in the right direction. I think this is what we need. What I meant by we are no further forward is effectively we are no closer to independence with the SNP than we were when you left the SNP. You know, as you said, things have stalled from about 2017. So that was the only clarification I had. I've just had a lot of fun reading over the comments. I see there's an awful lot of activity here, and people are genuinely happy with what you've done and what the party's done and what we've been doing. The only question, I have is, what is Alapa going to be doing now for the next 5 years? What's on your mind for strategies of coping and changing people's minds on gaining a supermajority, or are there other tactics or thoughts in the pot here?
Well, tactics, thoughts in the pot. Right. The stuff that Alapa produced at short notice and in double quick time is really important stuff. I'll take one example, Jim Walker's debt and assets paper. A fundamental change, not just in the approach to negotiating independence, but in the psychology of. And look, I'm despite what many people say, I'm fine about admitting mistakes. I do it all the time, but more than admitting mistakes, I try to do something about it. And it was a mistake, not necessarily to advocate a currency union, but to advocate it in the way I did back in 2012, 2013, because not incidentally because I would necessarily say a currency union wasn't the best policy economically at that time. I think it was, possibly, but much more because it allowed Osborne to say no. And my calculation was that George Osborne saying no to the Scots would be beneficial to us. In fact, I underrated the Scottish cringe. That George Osborne saying no to the Scots. Yes, of course, people got annoyed about it, but of course, secretly thought, "Oh my God, we're not going to be allowed to use the currency now. Oh dear, dear, dear." And that took a bit of explaining, which took time in the campaign. So it would have been far better to present the currency policy in a different way, one that didn't give an effective veto to your opponents. So therefore, the Jim Walker paper saying, look, we're not getting a share of the assets. You've decided that. Right, you can keep the liabilities as well. And that'll give us a clean break, a fresh start, and we'll go blinking into the sunlight as a new nation with a zero debt position, which will add enormously to our credibility in terms of the international marketplace. In fact, folk will be falling over themselves to buy our bonds at keen rates of interest. Keen rates of interest which allow us, let's say it's 1% for a 20-year bond, allow us to invest in housing at a 3% return. I mean, come on. You don't have to be a Nobel laureate in economics to see the implications of that possibility. So, but more than the policy, which is great, is the psychology, of not going in as a subservient, asking for a crumb from the table of the magnificent, all-powerful Wizard of Oz, but basically saying, look, that's the logic. You've decided no share of assets, therefore no share of liabilities, therefore we start with a clean break, therefore we're going to be able to do this to the economy. That is credible. And so we'll develop the point, to make your point, Jason, we'll develop that policy and we'll make it sing and dance so that people understand it, so that people have confidence and look, say, Alapa, they're the people with the plan.
It's the singing and dancing that we've been completely without. When you use that language of, if we have no share of assets, we've no share of liabilities, it rings in my head like that phrase, no taxation without representation. And it's this language, this positive psychological language of, motivating people that we've felt the absence of for so long. And the feeling of heartbreak in the Alapa community online this morning, last night was, it was heartrending. And I think the main driving force into this was that there was no great rhetoric or philosophy of independence. So, that language and that psychology is just it's it's indispensable. We can't do without that. And all we're having from the leadership of the SNP is a grand silence, a great silence on any forward push or any sort of psychology of the nation becoming.
No, it's not. It's not a silence. It's one long apology.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
The SNP psychology is a long apology for being so rude, or to use Denise's term, so mean as to want national independence. And I characterise and I paraphrase, but it could be summarised as this: we're sorry we're being so inconvenient to win another election, and we're sorry to bother you with all these important things going on, like the pandemic, and we understand how important all that is. But when we've got time, could we have our wee independence thing sort of treated with reasonably, please, sir? I mean, I paraphrase, but and also I can tell you, I'll paraphrase this. I adore the people of England, as people well know, and a magnificent nation with a tremendous heritage and all sorts of things, fantastic literary heritage, and great traditions, and profound common sense among the plain people of England, and all that sort of stuff. But I tell you this, that no one in history has ever achieved anything taking on the British establishment with that sort of attitude. And anybody who has, you've never heard of, because they were never heard of again. And anybody you have heard of, Mr. Gandhi, for example, had a totally different attitude.
Sorry, just one more quick question, because it appeared to me here and we're live, and I might forget it in about 2 minutes. But we've been talking a great deal about the poison and the toxicity and the vitriol from a lot of SNP supporters online, and I don't want to go down the line of blaming SNP supporters, but surely you've experienced this too, and I'd really like to know your opinion on where do you think this is coming from? Why are people being so toxic in this discussion?
Well, I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about. I never experienced any of this. I never have any of this directed at me, not by the online community, not by the mainstream media, not by anyone. I have such an easy life. That's amazing. I think from the SNP people, and let's not say SNP people, through some SNP people,
of course,
particularly incredibly latecomers to the SNP, people who I had a story about one such clown in Aberdeenshire who told Hamish Vernal. This is Hamish Vernal. This is somebody with 50 years membership of the Scottish National Party, former Lord Provost of Aberdeenshire, somebody who is, one of the people who have done great things for the SNP's credibility, is generally regarded as a amazing guy by all concerned, opponents, friends, loyal colleagues, etc., but is not too proud to stick a leaflet through a door. That's the sort of character we're talking about. And Hamish Vernal joined Alapa 5 weeks ago and was phoned up by this total and utter little pipsqueak with 2 minutes of membership to tell him his services weren't required in putting up SNP posters anymore because he joined Alapa. So, I have to say, turning down somebody who's putting up your field posters is a remarkably act of self-harm anyway. But I was just struck by the contrast between the total nonentity who was issuing the order and the person of stature he was giving the snub to. Hamish Vernal is worth 100 of the, and I choose my calculation carefully, is worth 100 of that individual, at the least.
I would say, from what you're saying on that, you must be remarkably proud of the people that were out, the activists that were out working for Alapa. They put in a tremendous shift, and they deserve all the plaudits that should be coming their way.
Yeah, and I'm going to do that's my next broadcast this afternoon is a broadcast to the 5,000. I shall be feeding the 5,000 with praise. And
competition, competition.
I'm telling them that there are better times ahead for Alapa, and there are better times ahead because they've created a coherent and political force which will have its turn and will have its time.
Iain, have you got anything there you want to ask Alec?
Well, I think I'd just like to thank Alec for giving us all a bit of hope again. I think we went through some very dispiriting times, and win or lose, I mean, I was proud to stand with you. I'll be proud to stand with Alba in the future. It's renewed my hope that there are people capable of bringing independence to Scotland, because that's what we need to do. Nobody's going to give us independence. We need to fight for it. We need to have effort, and we need to have strategy. And I mean, the SNP are a strategy-free zone. They have no idea other than to keep themselves in power. They have no idea how to take on the British state. I think you do. And I think there's lots of people in Alba that are happy to go along with a leader that has some strategy. So, you've got my continued support. I wish you well in the future, Alec, and I thank you for all you've done.
I would just like to second that, Alec, before you go. I would say the one thing that stands us in great stead is that I became active in the party in the 70s. I'm used to bad times, good times. I can remember when we didn't have enough money in constituencies to leaflet the whole constituency, etc. So I think it might have been you at a conference, or the wonderful Winnie was talking about the SNP. The tide goes out, but when it comes back in, it goes further up the beach. And that's the way I view. Was it Winnie? Yeah, God bless her. I love that woman. That our tide's out just now, but we will come crashing back on further up the beach next time. Alec, thank you. And I know on behalf of everyone that's involved with Alba, we thank you so much for your efforts, and please stay with us, because we'll stay with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you all. But can I just add my thanks to, because I was telling the press yesterday, who were totally disbelieving how much I'd enjoyed the last 6 weeks. I should have gone on to say that the points of enjoyment were discussions such as this. I've had a whale of a time talking to the online community. I've really enjoyed it. And also one of this, I mean, look, every campaign has successes and failures, incidentally, attached to it, and things you should do better and things you've done really well. One of the things we did really well was interspersing the online community with the mainstream journalists at the press conferences. Introducing some sanity into the conversation occasionally by having an online journalist. And also, I mean, it did strike me when I was watching this wild and woolly, and rather, I don't know how I'd describe him, somebody who looked like he just emerged from Findlay's cave or something. The guy who purported to represent the Courier, an advertiser, I don't. Do DC Thompsons realise what their journalists dress like these days? Who knows? But anyway, he was purporting to be from the Courier, and he asked a really, just not even importantly, just a totally daft question. It was about 2 days old, you see, and but one of you lot came on immediately after him, and I was just thinking to myself, my God, we've now reached a position where the mainstream media look like, weirdos and cranks, and the online community look intelligent, respectable, and asking searching questions. We've reached a total counterpoint in journalism, where the mainstream media are insane and the online communities are sane, forward-looking, and thoughtful. So I've enjoyed this sort of thing enormously. So thank you.
And thank you.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barrhead Boy.